goes off every morning at the same time. You snooze it as much as you can, but you know you have to get up sooner or later. Getting up early in the morning is a struggle for some people, whether you're a morning person or not. You may walk around like a zombie, not really knowing what you're doing, but somehow you're moving. Getting up, getting ready, and going to school may not seem like a troublesome task, but for some people it takes a toll on them. Most of you have been high school students, so you understand what it's like to wake up so early. Waking up at an early time and then having to stay awake for a long period of time is a difficult task. Yes, it's possible, but it's a struggle. Therefore, some of you have some sort of understanding what it's like to be a sleep-deprived student. Being a high school student, I can relate to being tired at school. I usually get 6 to 7 hours of sleep involuntarily. I can't fall asleep before a certain time that is considered late. My morning routine consists of waking up at 6:10, taking a shower, blow drying, and straightening my hair. After I finish with my hair, I eat breakfast, get dressed, brush my teeth, and finally leave the house at 7:30. Doing all of these tasks in that amount of time is difficult. Almost every day at school I feel drowsy and can't focus in the mornings. Therefore, I believe school should start at a later time, so students will be able to function properly at school. In this speech, I will attempt to persuade you to understand why school should start at a later time. There are a few negatives if school starts at a later time. After-school activities can be a problem if school start times are pushed back. The practice times may conflict with other sports who need the same practice area. Practice outdoors may have issues with the amount of daylight they have in order to get practice in before the sun goes down. Also, students will have to leave school earlier, so they will miss more classes information. There can be ways to solve these problems. Setting up lights outside for practices that run later will help them to get their full practices in, whether it's day or night. Also, the games can be altered so the students won't have to leave classes so early. Transportation can be impacted if the start times are later. There is a routine for bus transportation already set up. If the start times are changed, not only will the cost be affected, but recruiting more drivers and designing new routes will be a factor. Also, the traffic may be worse for students and teachers driving to school. There are ways to prevent these things from happening. Public transportation for older students can be an alternate transportation method. Although traffic congestion may be a factor, it will help prevent students from driving drowsy. There are multiple risks from school starting too early. Richmond, a writer for the Atlantic magazine, writes, "The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is urging education policymakers to start middle and high school classes later in the morning. The CDC recommends students at least get 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep each night. If they don't get the recommended amount of sleep, there are risks of high rates of obesity, depression, motor vehicle accidents, and just a lower quality of life." Also, Paul Bronson and Ashley Merriman, authors of the book Nurture Shock, state not only will getting less sleep increase obesity, it will also increase the risk of obtaining ADHD. Bronson states, "It has been shown that the less sleep kids get, the less active they are during the day." The authors of Nurture Shock believe that not getting enough sleep is because your brain isn't ready to function yet. When students wake up, their bodies are still releasing melatonin, which makes them want to fall back asleep. Since the melatonin is still being released as they are driving to school, they are responsible for more than half of the 100,000 fall asleep crashes. One school in Minnesota pushed their start time back and saw drastic positive changes. There were higher grades being recorded and a higher level of motivation. Parents that believe their children are getting enough sleep is an issue that needs to be resolved. Merriman states that 60% of high schoolers report extreme daytime sleepiness. Also, about 20 to 33% are falling asleep in class at least once a week. There is an abundance of benefits for starting school later. According to Emily Richmond, writer for the Atlantic newspaper, tests have been conducted that show having a later start time affects the students positively. Richmond provides information about the University of Minnesota's Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement and how they found that schools that started later in Minnesota, Colorado, and Wyoming all showed improvements in school performance. There was a boost in attendance, test scores, and grades in multiple subjects. There was also a decrease in tardiness, substance abuse, and depression. Researchers also found that teens' biological clocks won't allow them to fall asleep very early. Poor sleep can result to reliance on caffeine, tobacco, and alcohol. According to Nancy Shue, writer for the NPR magazine, pediatricians recommended pushing school start times back. In association with NPR, the National Sleep Foundation found that 50% of middle schoolers and 87% of high schoolers are getting less than the recommended amount of sleep. The average teenager can't go to sleep by 11 p.m. Therefore, they cannot get the suggested 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep. Students getting a sufficient amount of sleep will be more alert, promoting better academic performance. Also, school times are pushed back. Adolescents will be home alone less time. Therefore, they won't be exposed to unhealthy activities. I hope my speech today has persuaded you to rethink why schools should have a later start time. Yes, there are reasons why schools shouldn't be pushed back, but the benefits overrule the disadvantages. My purpose of this speech was to persuade you to understand why schools should start later. Many students suffer from sleep deprivation, and that needs to change. There have been multiple accidents due to people falling asleep, as well as grades and motivation dropping. Wilson Misner, a playwright, expresses what most students think when he describes the amount of sleep required by the average person is 5 minutes more.